Hello BookTube, Sarah here, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my February 2017 wrap-up. February was an amazing reading month for me. I actually read one book more than I read in January. I didn't want to say I read more books because it makes it sound like I read a lot more books, but I read one more book than I read in January. And considering February is the shortest month of the year, that's not too shabby. I was getting a little concerned that I wasn't going to get my TBR actually completed, but I did. So I'm super happy about that. I actually finished at the 11th hour. I finished like in the afternoon of the 28th. I finished my last book. So this is going to probably be a little bit of a longer video, so I'm going to jump right into it and start talking about my stats for February. So I read a grand total of 12 books in February. I am four books ahead of my Goodreads goal as of the 28th. I take that stat from the 28th or from the last day of the month. So that way it's current as of to the end of the month. Even though I'm filming this like a week into March, it's at least current as to that date. My star ratings. I read 1 5-star book, 1 4.5-star book, 3 4-star books, 6 3-star books, and 1 2.5-star book. I read 7 romance books, 2 historical fiction, 1 historical romance, 1 historical suspense, and 1 fiction novel. I read 10 adult books, 1 middle grade book, and 1 new adult book. This is something new that I'm adding, putting in what age range, I guess, the books are, just so you guys, in case you're curious. I read 1 book that was published in the 1980s, 1 book that was published in the 2000s, and 10 books that were published between 2010 and 2016. I read 11 ebooks and 1 paperback, 11 novels, and 1 novella. My page count total, 3,697 pages. That works out to approximately 132 pages a day. Really freaking good. So we are going to jump right into the books that I read. Now, I did read one of my Back to My Childhood books. That's the one that was for middle grade and the one published in the 80s. Last year, I would put these and slot these in like with the rest of my books in order of least favorite to most favorite. I've decided not to do that this year because with middle grade books and the Back to My Childhood books, they're not intended for, like, I shouldn't say they're not intended for me as an audience, because a lot of us read YA and new adult. That necessarily isn't intended for us. But I think, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, that these Babysitter's Club and Nancy Drew and all that stuff are rated differently than, you know, the Snow Child that I read this month. You know, you're talking 2 different things. So for me to lump them in with everything else, I don't think is necessarily fair to the other books. I don't know. Does that sound weird? I don't know. But anyway, so I did read book number 6 in the Babysitter's Club series, which is Chrissys Big Day. In this book, Christy's mom marries Watson, which is Karen's father. Karen is from, of course, the Little Sister series by Anna Martin, which I never read because it was too young for me at the time. This one was a cute story. What I really got a kick out of, and the one thing that kind of stuck in my mind, because these are all rereads for me. I mean, several times over rereads, I'm sure. But the whole premise of the book is that not only are they getting married, but there are going to be 14 children coming to the wedding, and of course the Babysitter's Club steps in, and they offer to babysit all the children for the week leading up to the wedding so the adults can, you know, do whatever needs to be done. So anyway, what I love is that they separated them into groups, like Christy's group, or Marianne's group, or Claudia's group. And whenever they talk about the kids, they would never just say, the kids in Dawn's group. It was always, they named all 6 kids in Dawn's group, or all 4 kids in Claudia's group. You know, it was never simple, like, you knew all the names of all 14 children by the time this book was over. And I was laughing to myself as I was reading it because I'm thinking, did they have like a page, like a word count goal that they had to meet? So like they had to name all 14 children every time. I mean, it was adorably cute. I really liked reading it. I really love this cover. This is not the original cover that I originally had. It's the exact same, like the way they're all positioned, but I think it was a different artist. And I felt that Christy looked a lot older than she's only supposed to be 13. But I really like this cover. I think it's really whimsical and cute. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. And I'm looking forward to continuing on. I'm going to try and read at least 1 or 2 of these every month. I mean, that's really going to bring my reading stats up, I think, in terms of how many books I finish. I might have to raise my reading goal for the year if I'm going to do that, because I actually also am hoping to start reading more nonfiction, and I've got a lot of nonfiction in paper or in print book format, which I will talk about in my next video, because I will be doing a book haul and sharing some nonfiction books that I picked up. But I'd like to try and read one every month, at least one. Have it be my bedside reading. So anyway, I'll talk more about that in my next video. So as is my usual, I'm going to be talking about my books that I read this month from my least favorite to my most favorite. So starting off is Rock Addiction by Malia Singh. I gave it 2.5 stars. It has a 3.71 star rating on Goodreads, and it is the first book in the Rock Addiction series. I had some major problems with this book, guys. I had some major problems with the relationship between Molly and Fox. This, I believe, is labeled as a new adult novel. I find that new adult is code for erotica. Almost every new adult book that I have read has been nothing but sex, sex, and more sex. And you know what? Written properly, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, written in such a way that the characters actually have intimacy, not just sex, is well done. That is not what happened in this book. I nearly DNF'd this book several times, because there was one scene at about the 50% mark of this book where they're arguing and she wants to leave. She's had enough and she wants to leave. I think, I'm trying to remember what the situation was, but they were fighting about something. I don't want to give away too much of the plot if you actually want to read this. And there's nothing wrong, let me backtrack that. The book was good. It was well written. It's just the choices that were made I didn't agree with. So anyway, they're arguing, and he actually has her pinned down to the bed. And he's hurting her, not in a good way. And she is begging him to let her go. And, and he's screaming at her, "No, you're mine." No, that is not a loving relationship, kids. That is abuse. And it's not sexy. I'm sorry. But again, there were parts of this book that really made me like it. And the end, well, Fox, the lead male, the dude on the cover with all the tattoos, he didn't completely redeem himself to me. It's very hard to come back from that point once you've gotten to a certain point for me. But I enjoyed the writing enough, and I liked Molly. I just think she made some really bad choices. I will continue on with the series mainly because I think I have the second or third book. So I never try and discount a series off the first book unless I really, really hated it. And in this case, I really didn't. There were some really adorable scenes in this, like the two of them were at the farmer's market together and stuff like that. I know, it sounds really cheesy, but it made him human outside of this, rock star sex god. And that's the whole premise of the book, if you guys are unfamiliar, is that he's the lead singer for some, very, very famous rock group. And she is just her sister does PR for them, and they meet at a party, and it goes from there. Well written, just maybe not for me. Obviously this has an audience, and I'm sure a lot of people really enjoy it. But again, I'm going to try the second book. It's about another one of the band members. If it does not impress me either, I probably won't be continuing on with the series past that. But I like to give series at least 1 or 2 books, because characters make different choices, and, I might like the next book better. Next up, we have The Winter People by Jennifer McMahon. I gave this book 3 stars. It has an average rating of 3.75 stars on Goodreads. So, let me just say this. I was not the intended audience for this book. I have realized after reading this, I do not like scary books. And I mean scary books. So I was reading away on this, and it wasn't a terribly long novel. I want to say it was under 300 pages. And the basic plot of it is, it takes place in Vermont, and this teenage girl named Ruthie, is that her name? I can't remember. Her mother suddenly one day goes missing, and they can't find her. She's looking after her younger sister. So they start tearing apart the house, and they come across this loose floorboard in her mother's bedroom, and they lift it up, and inside is this diary written by this woman named Sarah, 100 years ago, talking about how these winter people, or these like monsters or spirits, are killing people. And it was a very well written book. I had a very hard time reading it because as much as I enjoyed the writing, as much as I enjoyed the characters, this was not a character-driven story, by the way. This was definitely plot-driven. This scared the living bejesus out of me. I was at about the 30% mark and was going to bed, and I thought, I'm DNFing the book. I'm not going to finish it because I'm not enjoying it. Do you know what I mean? And to spend another couple days reading it, I just didn't want to do that. So I was trying to go to sleep, and the scene right before I was trying to go to sleep is that these things were in the closet, and you could see like their beady eyes. And I'm laying there in bed, and I'm just like staring at the closet, and I'm like, nope, we are not sleeping tonight. Luckily, it was like a Saturday night. I came out here to the living room, sat down, and finished this book in like an hour and a half. So I got it finished. Again, if you like horror novels, if you like being scared, please check this out. I'm sure you will love it. Me, not so much. But then again, I am just a big wimp. Next up is Bad Romeo by Lisa Raven. I gave this book 3 stars. It has an average star rating on Goodreads of 4.12. This is the first book in the Star-Crossed series. Again, speaking about DNFing books, if the writing and the plot had not been nearly as good in this book, it would have been DNF'd. But this book literally had me hooked right from the beginning. But I couldn't stand the characters. I can't even remember their names now. I think Cassie and Ethan? Cassie and Ethan, I believe, were their names. But they met in, like, I don't know if it was a high school for the performing arts or a college for the performing arts, but they both wanted to be actors. And they kind of had this chemistry or this attraction right from the get-go. So it goes through pretty much their tumultuous relationship during those years at this college. And then to now when they're in their mid-20s, like it's been about 3 or 4 years, I think, since they'd seen each other. Sorry. Yeah, both characters needed counseling. Major counseling. They had some serious issues that they were dealing with. And it bothered me, and I'm like, no, you know what, I'm reading it, it's not bad, but it's not fantastic, and I get to almost the end, and I'm like, alright, you know what, I finished it, it wasn't bad, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to continue on with the next book, and then there's a cliffhanger, so now I kind of have to go out and get the next book, because I want to know what happens. As much as I didn't enjoy the characters, I do want to see what kind of dysfunction they get into in the next book, because that's kind of the fun of this, I think. But yeah, I mean, still, this cover, hands down, stunning. Stunning cover. The characters, not so much. But again, if that's your kind of thing, I think I labeled this book as an adult novel because they are in their mid-20s, mid to late 20s, during part of the book, but I think it would almost be classified as a new adult because they are in their first years of college for part of the book as well. So I'm really not sure exactly what you would classify this as. But irregardless, 3 stars, it wasn't a horrible read, but I didn't love it. Next up, we have Sweet on You by Darlene Panzera. I gave this book 3 stars. It has an average rating on Goodreads of 3.30 stars, and it's the first book in the Cupcake Diary series. I'll be honest, I do not have a lot to say about this book. It was labeled as a romance. There were some romantic aspects in it. This was a very sweet romance. I mean, barely any hand-holding. So if that's your kind of thing, definitely check it out. It was about 3 friends who are going through a very rough time in their lives, and they decide to open a little cupcake shop, and some of the pitfalls that happen to them along the way. It's a very short book. I mean, it's maybe 150 pages, but really, really adorable, and it's a series I really liked. It was nice and refreshing after some of the more bad relationship books that I read this month. It was nice to sit down and have this. This was the very last book I read in February, so it was a great way to end the month. And I really do recommend it. These are really, really reasonable for the Kindle, and they're quick reads, and the characters are really fantastic. I really did like it. Next up, we have The Snow Child by Elwyn Ivy. I gave this book 3 stars. It has an average rating of 3.94 stars on Goodreads. I am not sure at all what to say about this book. Characters were interesting. The plot was really interesting, but I finished the book and literally sat there feeling extremely melancholy for like 2 days. Not that I couldn't pick up another book to read, but it just left me with this feeling of like, blah. Like, it literally, I couldn't have given it any more or any less than a 3-star. I think because of the writing and the plot, it deserves more than a 3-star, but because of the way that I felt, like, personally afterward, it just, yeah, it was just, it wasn't a happy ending, it wasn't a sad ending, it was just an ending. And, I mean, I know this has made its rounds on Goodreads, or not on Goodreads, but on BookTube, but if you're into fiction novels, definitely check it out. You might like it, maybe it was just me, maybe it's not what I was in the mood for at the time, I don't know, but I did read it, and I did enjoy it, I just, blah. That's all I can really say about it. Next book is First Time and Forever by Sarah Morgan. This book I gave 3 stars to. It has an average rating of 4.08 stars on Goodreads, and it is the first book in the Puffin Island series. This was a really cute romance story. It just didn't wow me. It's not Sarah Morgan's best. If you are looking to read Sarah Morgan, I highly, highly recommend starting with Sleigh Bells in the Snow, which is the first book in the O'Neill Brothers trilogy. Fantastic. This book fell a little flat for me. The main female protagonist had a lot of issues, and she was given custody of her niece, whom she has never met. Her sister was a very famous actress who died in a plane crash, and she's gone to Puffin Island because it's like out of the way somewhere in Maine, and she's trying to keep her niece away from the paparazzi, and of course she runs into this local guy, and, you know, things go from there. There were a lot of characters introduced in this book, and I really, really liked that, and I was like, you know, I can't wait to read the rest of the books in the series. Even though I didn't give this one a terribly high star rating, I would still continue on with it, because she still is a really good author. Just parts of the story fell flat for me. I found the main characters a little too over the top. That was one of my main issues, but there's another issue, and this didn't have anything to do with my star rating on this book. But I went to go look for the next book in the series, and it's not available for the Kindle. You can only buy it in, like, print book, I think. And that's really disappointing. Especially this day and age when almost everybody reads off of a device. That to not have your book available for the Kindle is kind of silly. But maybe they'll bring it out eventually. I don't know. But yeah, if you like contemporary romance and you want a really fun summer beach read, I absolutely recommend this book. So next up, we have Cupid's Kiss by Courtney Hunt. I gave this book 4 stars. It has an average rating on Goodreads of 3.97 stars. This is the second book in the Cupid's Coffee Shop series. This is if you guys are new to my channel, I'm working my way through this series this year. It is a series of 12 novellas, one published for each month, and these all originally came out in 2016, but I'm reading them one a month this year. So this was February's book. And I need to be honest, guys, there was not a lot to this book. This book, if it was in print book format, was only 44 pages long. But the reason it got 4 stars is that the author was absolutely able to tell a fantastic story from beginning, middle to end with extremely likable characters and without rushing anything in just 44 pages. For that, totally deserves 4 stars. And the story itself was adorably cute. It's about a woman named Val who owns a local card shop. Card and gift store, I guess, and she's kind of in love with the local UPS guy, and they've been friends for years, so it's not like it was like a rushed romance, but last year, the year before, she had her heart broken on Valentine's Day, and now she hated Valentine's Day, so he is going to try and change her mind on that. So, like I said, there's not a lot to these stories. They're so much fun, and the fact that each story is set in a different month, it really brings you into reading for the seasons. I don't know if any of you actually do that. Like, I know I predominantly only read Christmas books at Christmas time, but I really don't think much about the rest of the year. But to read a Valentine's Day story in February, even though I read a lot of romance, romance is different from Valentine's Day. To actually talk about Valentine's Day is a lot different, and it's a lot more fun. I really recommend this series, guys. It is so enjoyable. Speaking of series, I am working my way through this year. The next book on my list is The Unholy by Heather Graham. I gave this book 4 stars, and it also has an average rating of 4 stars on Goodreads. This is the 6th book in the Crew of Hunters series, and yes, you guys know how much I love this series. So there's the cover. This one takes place in Hollywood, And it's essentially about an up-and-coming actress who is murdered. And her boyfriend, who is the son of a movie, like a studio exec or something like that, is essentially being framed for her murder. But, of course, there are spirits and ghosts and stuff like that involved. One of the things that really made this story fun, now, this wasn't my favorite of the Crew of Hunters series so far, but it was still really enjoyable, was the inclusion that the main character, like, she can see ghosts and she talks to ghosts. And one of the ones who actually resides in her bungalow in Los Angeles is Humphrey Bogart. And it was just so campy and so much fun that she's having these conversations with Bogey. And, you know, like, certain other people can see him too. And it just made it fun. I really enjoyed also the relationship between the two main characters. I think it was well developed. I did listen to part of this book on audiobook because I was kind of running out of time with reading this one, and I needed to get it done. So I was out and about, so I had it on audiobook. The narration wasn't bad, but there's just something about a romantic suspense novel written by a woman that is narrated by a man. I don't know. Again, when you get to some of those wink-wink scenes that happen, you know, like the love scenes, narrated by a guy is always a little weird. But, you know, because I already owned the Kindle version of it, I got the audio for like $3 or $4. So that was super duper cool. But yes, I enjoyed this one, the 6th in the series. I am loving working my way through these. And this one was actually really adorable, and I do recommend it. So this next book was actually a bit of a surprise that it rated as high as it did this month for me. Not that, and you guys know how much I love my Harlequin category romance. Not that I discount them for being badly written or not fun stories. If I thought that they were badly written or were bad stories, I wouldn't read them. But every now and then you get one that is just like, you read the plot and go, oh yeah, okay, that's been done before. And then you read it and it's really well done. And in this case, it is Cowgirls Don't Cry by Silver James. I gave this book 4 stars, and it has an average rating on Goodreads of 4.04 stars. This is the first book in the Red Dirt Royalty series. I absolutely love this. So essentially, the plot is that the female is I'm having a horrible time remembering the characters' names. Her father has just died and left her his ranch. And he, the guy, is like a multi-billionaire from a multi-billionaire family, and he is being sent to essentially buy the ranch, and she doesn't want to let it go. So it's that whole struggle between the two of them. Now, this book had me laughing in places. She was absolutely witty and, you know, funny, and they had some great banter back and forth. There were scenes that even made me cry. I mean, not sobbing, but, you know, made me teary-eyed. And it was really, really nice, and I really, really enjoyed it. Like, honestly, I know I'm saying really a lot, but I really did enjoy it. And I'm absolutely looking forward to continuing on with the series. I think I own the second book, so I cannot wait to read the next one. This author is fantastic. I mean, she writes wonderfully. So even if you can't find this book, if you can find anything by Silver James, I definitely recommend that you pick it up. So the next one is An Offer from a Gentleman by Julia Quinn. I gave this book 4.5 stars, and it has an average rating of 4.08 stars on Goodreads. This is the 3rd book in the Bridgerton series, and this is Benedict's story. Benedict and Sophie. You guys know how much I absolutely love the Bridgerton series. And the first 2 books, The Duke and I and The Viscount Who Loved Me, both got 5 stars. This one didn't quite hit the mark for me. There was something that Benedict did in this book that I didn't absolutely agree with, and I don't want to get into what it is because it's a spoiler. But outside of that, I loved this story. I love the family. You know, this is just so fantastic. Now, this story is about, as I said, Benedict and Sophie. And Benedict is the second brother in the family. And he doesn't hold a lot of the responsibilities that Anthony does. So he can kind of be free to be like a playboy or what have you. So he meets Sophie, and Sophie is actually a maid. It's very much a Cinderella-esque kind of story, in the fact that Sophie is the illegitimate daughter of an earl or a duke, I can't remember. And the father marries, and the stepmother wants nothing to do with this child because she's illegitimate for one. And then when the father dies, the stepmother essentially makes her a maid. And then one night when there's this ball, now this all happens in the first chapter, so I'm not giving anything away. The other maids in the house dress Sophie all up and send her off to this ball, which is where she meets Benedict. And it's literally a fleeting meeting, say that 3 times fast. And they, they meet just for like an hour or so, but he's enamored with her and can't get her out of his head. And then they meet up again, years later, but he doesn't know that it's her, because of course it's no longer a masquerade. She's, just dressed in her maid clothing, and then the story goes from there. So, really, really wonderful story. There were a few things in here that I didn't quite agree with that Benedict did, but I understand that that's how it worked at the time. But, I'm sure you can imagine what it is, because the title is An Offer from a Gentleman. So he persuades her for a certain thing and almost won't take no for an answer, which kind of bothered me. But other than that, still fabulous. Still love the series. Highly recommend it if you're into historical romance. And now, no pun intended, this book completely came out of left field and surprised me as being my favorite book of the month. And that is Caught by You by Jennifer Bernard. I gave this book 5 stars, and it has an average rating of 4.17 stars on Goodreads. This is the second book in the Love Between the Bases series, and this is a baseball romance. Not that I'd say that, like it's a silly thing, why would it, ever get 5 stars, but oh my gosh, guys, this book, when I finished it, it really made me start thinking about how I evaluate 5-star reads, and what I consider to be a 5-star book. And this is something I've kind of been thinking about for the past, 6 months or so, and I think I might do an entire video on it if you guys are interested in how I've reevaluated what I feel about 5-star books, or how I would rate a 5-star book. This book made me think and made me feel, and it's a contemporary romance, and it's about a AAA baseball team in Texas, and his name is Mike, and he is the catcher for the team, for the Kilby Catfish, and her name is escaping me at the moment. But they met at a bar in the last book, so this is the second book in the series. The first book I gave 4 stars to. It was a good story, but this one just seemed to go that much further. Now, there is a LGBTQ element in this book, in the fact that his brother is gay. Now, that doesn't really make any bearing on the story, but it does, because it sets off a chain of events that happen, that he's dealing with a pitcher who's very problematic, who has issues with, gays and lesbians and stuff like that. And again, for a contemporary romance, these are some harder hitting issues. And it was really well done. And this book, in some scenes, had me laughing out loud. I thought it was hysterical. And then in others, as I was reading it, because I was reading it last Sunday here, and my husband was at work, I was actually sitting here crying. I mean, not big, ugly crying, but crying at a couple scenes that happen in this book. So again, it evoked a lot of emotion, and I really enjoyed it. And if you like contemporary romance, Jennifer Bernard is a great author, and this book was fabulous. Now, you don't have to have read the first book to read this book, but it is kind of fun because you get the first story, and you kind of meet the two of them, because they knew each other from like a year earlier. And, you kind of get to see the beginning of the relationship, if you will, and I think it just adds that much more to it. But yeah, highly, highly recommend. 5-star read. I absolutely loved it. So anyway, guys, that is it for this video. I really hope this is not as long as it says on my timestamp here on my camera. I'm feeling a lot of this is going to get cut. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, excuse me. Please let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. And until my next video, guys, take care and happy reading. Bye.